Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Wednesday learning class, where we inspire and we share words of Torah and stories. We always like to start off with giving, because how we give, that's how Hashem, God, will give to us. Please give generously, so Hashem will give us generously. So everyone can join me in giving a few coins in the tzedakah box. Today's a very, very special day. Tonight starts Yud Shvat, and I'm going to share with you what that is. But before I do, I just want to say this class is dedicated in merit of the complete refuah shalema of a shlucha, Henya Rivka Bas Devora Leah, my neighbor Razel Bas Hadas, and a shlucha that tunes into this program weekly, who needs a refuah shalema, Devora Leah Bas Yafa Liba. She should have a complete refuah shalema. And of course, all Klal Yisrael. I'm thinking about everyone. And I also do this class weekly in memory of my dear grandmother, Rivka Dina Bas Yosef Yehuda. I hope you're proud. So on the 10th day of Shvat, on the Jewish calendar, upon the passing of the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson of righteous memory. In 1950, the leadership of Chabad, he was the leadership of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, passed away. He passed on to his illustrious son-in-law, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson of righteous memory. In the decades that followed, the Rebbe revolutionized, inspired, and guided the post-Holocaust transformation of the Jewish people that continues till this day. This day is so relevant to every Jew in our generation. It is surely a day of reflection, learning, prayer, positive resolution, and acts of goodness and kindness. I wrote a poem, and I would like to share it with you now, about our Rebbe, because a year after the passing of Rabbi Schneerson, he took upon leadership, and I would like to take a moment to reflect. So if you'd like to close your eyes while I read what I wrote, because it's all about reflection. What does the Rebbe mean to me? Imagine you can close your eyes and only see perfection. Imagine you can close your eyes and only see goodness and kindness. Imagine you can close your eyes and love everyone. Imagine you can close your eyes and see people's full potential. Imagine you can close your eyes and see humility. Imagine you can close your eyes and see fatherly love. Imagine you can close your eyes and see realness. Imagine you can close your eyes and see the truth. Imagine you can close your eyes and see a real example. Imagine you can close your eyes and feel holiness. That is who the Rebbe is to me. Dear Rebbe, thank you for everything you gave us and continue to give us. Now through your teachings, I strive to live up to your standards and make the world a better place. Thank you for your hard work, 24 hours. You were there for all of us. Thank you for showing me today that you still have a huge presence. And thank you for all your answers you show me daily. How do we thank you? That's how I feel about our Rebbe. How do we thank him? So we can thank him by learning his teachings. We can thank him by following in his footsteps. We can thank him by learning and watching his amazing words of wisdom. And we can thank him by giving, just like him. So thank you, Rebbe. Tonight, I want to introduce to you a wonderful person I recently met, who happens to be a distant relative. I met her in Israel, in Yerushalayim, in the Tzemach Tzedek Shul. We met on the way out, and somehow in conversation, I said good Shabbos, and I told her about our Torah learning class, and she was inspired. And I asked her a few questions. I said, do you have a Rebbe story? And she said, I do. I have many. I said, great. So that's how this class happened. So thank you for being here tonight on a different time zone. I'm going to introduce to you Rebbitzin Rivka Grunblatt from Argentina, a shlucha. If you could unmute yourself, she's going to share with us some stories about the previous Rebbe and her family, and stories of the Rebbe, and beautiful stories of inspiration.
Okay, thank you so much, Chaya. And it was so special also to meet you. I see we have some blood in common. We have things in common. I love what you're doing. It's extremely inspiring. And yes, I agree that the Chassidic stories are really, really special. And they give us so much. You know, many times there's a Fabringen, which is a Chassidic gathering, and based just on stories. And, you know, there's just so many interesting and elevated topics that could be discussed over there. But no, it's just based on stories, because the stories bring to life the learning and make it real. Right? Because we can learn and learn, but then we want to hear how people really put it into practice. And this is what inspires us and helps us also, you know, consider putting more into practice.
So Rivka, before we start, thanks for the intro. We're going to show a 2-minute clip. If you can look at the screen, and then we're going to continue with the rest of our program. So give us a moment while we pull up the video.
Ik denk best dat ze wegen zu Kazanowski, dat ze op de weg zum Reben, dem Chassidus Kashrus, dat ze Reben nemen. Der Rebbe hat gewähnt, und er hat auch voneinander gewähnt. Gewähnt. Und ihr gedenkt die Wörter, gedenke ich. Ihr darf so nicht, ihr sogar zu ihr, wo euch heraushelfen, mit was noch ich kennt zusammen. Aber ihr sollt sagt, noch nicht verwasen von mir im Ganzen. Ihr sollt tun und ihr will heraushelfen. Das hat er gesagt, das hat er gesagt. Wir sind herausgegangen. Nachher ist herausgekommen Chadakov und dann gesagt mir, was er war dort, als 8. Seher bei der Nacht wird einer verbringen, wo Covid Jutschwat. Oh, wir haben gewusst, dass sie sind etwas da, das ist Neues.
Thank you. Okay, we're back to you, Rivka.
Okay, so the idea of telling stories, which I loved so much when Chaya told me that her program is all about telling stories, brings to mind that something that happened, actually a story that happened in Peru. It's almost a neighboring country, let's say, a Spanish-speaking country. And it's related also to our shlichus personally, because my husband is the director responsible for all the Spanish publications of the Chabad editorial called Kehot. And the rabbi in Peru, Alav Shalom, told my husband that there was a boy who he was learning with, because this boy was dating a non-Jewish girl and he wanted to marry her. And so the rabbi was learning with him, Tanya. I imagine Tanya was spoken about recently more than perhaps other times. It's the basis of Chabad philosophy, which tells us about, you know, our Jewish soul, our Jewish makeup, and why we're here on this earth, and how to bring God down into our daily lives and onto the world. Basically philosophy. So he tried for many months learning with this young man about what it means to be a Jew, and so that it should be understood to him the importance also of marrying a Jewish woman, like deeper than just the basics, right? And the young man was not inspired. I didn't really talk to him, and the rabbi saw that this, wasn't really getting to him. And one day the young man told the rabbi that, thank you so much, but it really doesn't talk to me. I'm continuing my life as I am. I'll continue with this, with my fiance, and we're going to get married. So the rabbi, to say goodbye to him, gave him a gift of 3 books. Then we had in Spanish 3, now we have already 5, of the storyteller. The storyteller are books of stories told over the last few generations, let's say, from the time of the Baal Shem Tov, maybe a little before, the founder of the Chassidic movement. And the stories talk about self-sacrifice, difficult times, and how our Jewish ancestors have gone through, all kinds of situations and managed to come out alive and kicking, as they say, and maintain the Judaism. And after reading these 3 books, after a couple of weeks, he came back, the young man came back to the rabbi, and he says, you know what, I've been reading these stories, and if this is my people, then I want my children also to belong. And therefore I decided to leave the girl, and I, God willing, will look for a Jewish girl to marry and have Jewish children. So this is something that happened to us with our shlichus, which is very beautiful, how stories really leave a very strong impact and can bring things into practice, as we mentioned, which is so important. So tonight is, because I'm in Israel, so it's actually already now. As Chaya mentioned very clearly, is the passing of the previous Rebbe. The next year, the Rebbe, our Rebbe, assumed the leadership of the Chabad movement, of world Jewry, and not only Jewry, but also really caring about the whole world and everybody. Doesn't matter, who it is. It's also the yahrzeit of the Frierdiker Rebbe's grandmother, whose name was Rivka. And actually the previous Rebbe, we call him the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, grew up on Hasidic stories that his grandmother would tell him. Every day after school, he would run to his grandmother, and she would tell him about the making of Chassidus, how the beginning of the Chassidic movement came about, and how each Chassid, each person, managed to incorporate the Chassidic ideas into their lives, and all the stories. And actually, I have the privilege, and it's a very difficult one because it brings on a lot of responsibility. I feel also to have been born on this date, the last few minutes before the day changes to the 11th, which would be tomorrow afternoon. So there is a special feeling, of a connection towards the previous Rebbe, and of course, the Baruch Hashem, like we can all have to this Rebbe and the Rebbe and Rivka, who I'm named after. And I feel it's something like sometimes, uncomparable, but it's just the idea that, our in the history of the Jewish people, when Yaakov goes down to Egypt with his family members, so Yocheved was born as they were going through the gates of Egypt, and it's told that therefore she has a relationship to outside, to before slavery, and then of course she grew up in the slavery, so she has a possibility to inspire the women what not slavery is all about, and what it would mean to be free eventually when they would go out of Egypt. So this relationship of being like between both generations of Rebbes is very interesting, and particularly because also my own grandparents, some of them were born directly into the Chassidic movement, but one grandfather in particular wasn't, and he became a Chassid of the previous Rebbe's father inclusive, but like he was very active during the previous Rebbe's lifetime. And then my parents, who were also shluchim, sent by our present Rebbe to Ireland in 1950, and then to England, to Sunderland, where I was born. And I was basically brought up on the stories of my grandfather Chaya, known as Chaya, who came from a family who were not Hasidim. They were actually didn't agree very much with the Hasidic movement as it was developing then. And he became a Chassid of the previous Rebbe, and he had two brothers. One of them was a communist and unfortunately was killed in Russia. And the family that eventually came to America, the men were all married to non-Jewish women. Thank God they did convert according to Jewish law, and they really live a life of Torah and mitzvahs, which corresponds to someone who chooses to convert to Judaism. And this other brother became a Zionist, and he came to Israel, and he built up a kfar in Israel in the north, which is very interesting. But Judaism was very, very strange to them, very, it wasn't something that they were interested in. Yes, Zionism, but not anything to do with Judaism. It was even took years to be able to even put a mezuzah on any door in their house. While my Zayda became a Chassid, and he was doing the underground work for the previous Rebbe. We know that the previous Rebbe was a fighter to the core for Judaism. I mean, he was a one-man show. He himself was in jail 7 times. The first time when he was around 10 years old for defending a Jew. And he was in jail 7 times. The last time was extremely, extremely painful and torture. And what was his crime? His crime was to save Judaism, because it was totally prohibited in those times to keep any mitzvah, to teach anything, even to your own children. To teach was worse than to keep. To teach anything to your own children, to spread, to spread Hashem's word, to spread Judaism, to make sure that the Jewish flame stays alive, was one of the biggest crimes in Russia. My mother tells me that, anything related to Schneerson, to be a Schneersonist, was one of the major crimes there. And therefore he, as many other Chassidim, and Chaya's grandfather, also, right, or great grandfather, perhaps she's like the next generation from me, was one of the 10 Chassidim that signed to give up their life in order to save Judaism. My grandfather wasn't one of the 10, but he was one of them. He was actually killed in jail. He was a moel. He did bris milah on the children, on the boys, and he said that he wants every Jewish boy born to know who he is and to have the stamp of our forefather Avraham on his body. And he got into real danger. One of the stories is that once a general of the army, dressed, in the army uniform, met him in the street, and he told him, "Follow me." He followed him. He took him into a little room somewhere down the corridor. And there was a baby there, and there was no one else there. And he said, "Do the bris, be quiet, and leave." And the general left. And my Zayda was left there to do the bris by himself, to hold the baby, to do everything that had to be done. He finished the bris, he said the brachas, of course, benched the baby, and he left the baby on the bed, and he walked out. And there were court cases, and there were tortures, and he would also teach Torah in the middle of the night. At 1 o'clock at night, he would meet with older men, teach them. He would raise money for the yeshiva. He made matzah for the people of his community by himself. My mother says he would go for a few nights before Pesach. He would go to different houses, who had a rolling pin. He would hide it under his coat and take it to a certain room where he would have the oven. The next night he would go and get a bowl, and he would take it under his coat and put it in the room. And this is the way he prepared until eventually he could make the matzah. At some point he did have people helping him, some women. It was all so dangerous. I don't know if we can, I've heard these stories 10,000 times at least, but every time I think about them, it becomes more and more unreal. Like, how on earth, and where did they get the strength from, and why? Even why, why was it so necessary to have so much sacrifice just to be able to do a mitzvah? What would happen if they wouldn't have matzah? What would happen? They were thrown out of their house because they were religious, and they were thrown onto the streets. My mother said the snow was higher than her waist. She was around 8 or 10 years old then, and they had nowhere to go. With 6 children and my grandmother pregnant, they were thrown out because they were religious, and the police were telling them, you can change your mind. There's another family waiting to come into your home, whatever, 1 room, 2 rooms, what kind of homes they had. You just need to decide that you're not going to continue these. And of course, the titles that they would call, our mitzvahs with were not very honorable, so I won't say them. But, if you would just leave all this religion and be normal and be like us and fulfill and follow the laws of the country, you can go back into your home. And then you'll see, look at these children. They're going to have school bags. They're going to have toys. They're going to have games. They're going to have food. They're going to have clothes. And you're going to be miserable and in the street. Choose, make a choice. And Baruch Hashem, thank God, my grandfather said, no, we are Jews and we will follow Hashem's word no matter what. We are not going back into the house, and we are not leaving our Judaism. And they found themselves in the street with nowhere to go. Anybody they knew lived in 1 room, maybe 2 rooms. There was nowhere to go. And so my grandfather led his family to the local shul, where he took some pieces of wood and closed off a corner in the women's gallery. And that's where they lived for 8 years. We've all heard stories of Anna Frank, right? Who lived in hiding. And well, my mother lived like that also. For 8 years, she said she slept in a baby crib. Even at 11 years old, some of them slept on straw that they managed to collect from a barn. And they lived like rats, cockroaches, like really, that's what the community used to call them, the family of rats living up there in the corner of the shul. Water was 2 blocks away in the river, which many times they had to break the ice. My grandmother had to break the ice to use a mikvah to be kosher for her husband. But there was no water close. The water was 2 blocks away for anything. My mother says how she used to have the job of bringing 2 pails of water every night, with the stick and the pails hanging on her shoulders, to their room in the shul, because we have a custom of washing our hands in the morning. As soon as we wake up, we thank Hashem for our souls, and we wash our hands before before our feet touch the floor. This is a Chassidic custom from the Zohar, actually from Kabbalah. And my Zayda wouldn't go for less. But in those circumstances, come on, what would happen if they would walk to the river and wash their hands? I mean, and she had to carry those pails every night, and every drop of water that would spill was so painful. And she had to carry it up a steep staircase. The reason was, why would she have to do it if she had brothers? The same way that she had and her sisters had to carry heavy bags of materials and strings and things that they would do to do some sewing and to be able to earn some money, was because her brothers had the payas and they had their beards, and it was dangerous for people to know that there were religious children living around in the area in that shul. So they would, if they had to go out, they had to cover themselves always, even in very, very hot summers. So the girls were usually the ones to go out in the streets. There are so many stories to tell of their self-sacrifice just to keep Judaism going. And this was all coming from the Rebbe. Now, the word Rebbe was one of the most dangerous words to be heard or to be said in Russia then. Anyone who had contact with the Rebbe was in real danger. And because the authorities knew that my grandfather was in contact with the Rebbe, they would take him. Many nights when he didn't come home till a certain hour, my grandmother knew that he was taken by the police. My mother says how she would stay awake. She couldn't sleep at night until she knew her father came home. And when he came home, she would overhear how he told my grandmother they had beaten him. They had broken, banged him with glass bottles on his neck. They would put his fingers in the doors, anything to find out where is the Rebbe? Where is this nest of Judaism? Where is your strength coming from? Where are other Chassidim? How is this continuing? What is going on? And of course, he wouldn't tell. He wouldn't give names of other friends involved in the same thing. And I know that at some point they tortured him so badly, but he gave names of Chassidim who already passed away. He would never give a name of anyone else so that the police should go after him. So he allowed himself to be tortured literally. And this was just to keep Judaism going. And like I'm saying, there are so many stories. Perhaps I'll tell one that comes to mind now. So eventually he was taken to jail. And when they came to, he was 37. And when they came to take him, they were looking for the Schneerson books. Now, my grandfather had, Jewish books in his home. He had some holy books, but they weren't interested in any of them. They wanted the Schneerson books. They wanted the Hasidic books because they knew that the strength of keeping the flame alive was coming from Chassidus, was coming from the Rebbe, not just also, of course, it is Torah, right? But it's like a part of Torah that keeps us going, and even till today, of course. And this is what they were looking for. So the kids managed to pass the books that my grandfather had written when he would hear the Rebbe speaking. He wrote what the Rebbe had been saying and teaching, and the children managed to pass the books one to each other and then throw it out of the window. But he was taken, and my grandmother was left with the 6 children. Living alone in the shul. And of course, the kids were extremely scared. My mother actually sat outside the jail for a week, trying to bribe the police, begging them, where's my father? What's going to be with him? What's going to be with him? And she was a pretty little girl, and she was very, very, what's the word? Astuto. Whoever's listening to in Spanish could help me with that word. Very courageous, and she would try and talk to the police and use all kinds of ways for them to tell her, until eventually they said, if you don't leave, then we're bringing your mother and your whole family into jail, so stop coming here and stop bothering us. So that's actually the reason my mother could never go back to Russia, because even though she was invited, which is another very, very interesting story, the pain and the suffering was terrible. So my grandmother was left alone with the children, and my grandfather used to teach them always. He always used to say how we don't have clothes, we don't have food, we don't even have a home, we don't have anything. But there's one thing we have, which is our trust in Hashem, our trust in God, and that's going to get us through this. And eventually we're going to get to free shores. We're going to be able to live decently with a nice home, with clothes, with everything that we need. We just have to trust in Hashem. And he would say, actually, he told them the last Sukkot, the Yontif of Sukkot, before he was taken, he knew that that eventually they were going to catch on to him. And actually, the night they caught on to him, they caught another 6 Hasidim. So the Sukkot, he wanted to teach his children what a sukkah is. He wanted them to know every mitzvah because he knew eventually he wouldn't be there to teach them, and they have to know to keep the Judaism going. So he took them in the middle of the night silently into the yard of the shul, and there was like a little, junk room, or I don't know what you would call it, storage that we all have in our gardens. And he took off some planks of wood, and he put some leaves on there in total silence, and he put the whole family inside this little room, and he sang them a song, which is a very well-known song about a sukkah. But basically what he told them was that the Egyptians tried to get rid of us. Where are they? They don't exist anymore. The Babylonians, the Romans. During all our history, people have been trying to get rid of us, but we are strong. We trust in Hashem, and we are going to win over them. And this is what my grandmother would repeat to the children, repeat to them. She would sing, she would dance, she would laugh under the most horrible circumstances, just to keep the kids strong and to keep them going. And this was all coming from the power of the Rebbe, from the Rebbe's inspiration, from the Rebbe's teachings, from the Rebbe's love and care for every chassid. The Rebbe said, the previous Rebbe said, it's much harder, or perhaps it was our Rebbe who said, it's much harder to demand self-sacrifice from someone else than it is from yourself. Like, one thing is to demand anything from yourself, but how could you demand your students to give up their lives, to give up their families, to be ready to throw themselves into fire to save Judaism? It's just extremely, extremely difficult to do this. But this is what he had to do. This was his job, let's say, of the Rebbe, of keeping Judaism alive, and this was the way he could do it. So the children never used to go to school because they would have to go on Shabbos. Now, many parents did send their children to school on Shabbat, and they taught them not to write. They would go with bandages on the hand, or they forgot their pen at home. There was always an excuse. But my grandfather was so strict that he would never let them go to school. So they couldn't go into the street either, because if the neighbors would see that there's children living there and they're not going to school, they would tell the authorities would come, and they would all be in danger. So the children would go out, let's say in the middle of the night, just to get a little bit breath of fresh air, but during the day they would be closed in totally. And I once asked my mother, what did you do a whole day? Like, did you have, like children have today, of course not computers or video games, but did you have crayons? Did you have toys? Did you have, I don't know, papers to scribble on? She laughs and she says, what did we do a whole day? We cried of hunger. I said, come on, Ma. She says, yes, that's what we did a whole day. We cried of hunger. And other times they had the Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, also arranged that people should be able to work in their houses to earn a little bit of money, so they shouldn't have to go out into the city and again, go on all this persecution. So one Friday night, while my grandmother was sitting around the table with the children, telling them stories, singing to them, trying to keep them strong, and her candles were burning, but candles, no, there were no candles. It was a skin of potato with a little bit, a drop of some grease that maybe she saved from a chicken that they might have had, I don't know how many months ago, and she kept a little bit of the fat, and a piece of string that she pulled out from one of their clothes or something. And that's how she had her Shabbos candles. And all the children had their hiding places, just in case someone would come. This was always. So one of them was by the window, the rest of them were sitting around the table. And the one by the window all of a sudden calls out, everybody hide, someone's coming. And one of the authorities from the school, from the local school, came to the house. She was a tall woman, strong woman. My grandmother was very short, very tiny, but she was a really strong woman. This is real strength, what she had. And this lady knocks on the door, and my grandmother opens, and she said, what do you want? And she said, Mariasha, why do you have those stupid candles on your table? She must have said worse. Excuse me, no expression. Why do you have those candles on the table? Don't you know that it's prohibited to do your religion in this country? Your husband has been taken. Why are you continuing with these customs? What do you need it for? It's dangerous. And my grandmother said, excuse me, who are you to come and tell me what to do in my own home? And the lady continued yelling at her, and she said, a member of the KGB wanted to come, and I asked him not to come. I said, I'll come. So listen to me. He would have taken you straight away. And she said horrible things like, well, your husband has been taken. Now we'll take you to jail. Your children will be taken to the Russian army, and the hell will burn under your feet. I don't know, some horrible, horrible expressions. And she's screaming, and my grandmother says, get out of here. Who do you think you are to tell me what to do in my own home? Leave us alone. Leave me alone with my children. You're no one to tell me what to do or what to not do. And the miracle is that the lady turned around and left. And when the children came out of the hiding places, they were petrified and crying and terrified. And what did she say? They're going to burn us and this and that. And they're going to take us and they're going to take you to jail. And my grandmother calmed them down. And she said, what did our father always tell us? We must have trust in Hashem, just like the Egyptians tried and the Babylonians tried, the Romans tried, and they were not successful. The Russians will also not be successful. We will come out of here victorious and we'll have a normal life and we will win over them. Of course, she continued with the Shabbos candles, that she had to hide the children in the mountains. There's stories and stories and stories. Each thing is another story, but thank God, with her strength, she managed to keep the children religious, 6 children. She managed to escape from Russia, and she lived till 106. She would collect money for the yeshiva, and wherever she would go, they were in France for a while, like escaping from one country to the next. She would raise money to help maintain the seminary over there, the girls' seminary and the yeshiva, and then in New York. And the interesting thing is that she's buried right near the Rebbe's resting place, opposite the tzedakah box. There's a tzedakah box right opposite where she is. And my mother says she's still collecting, still helping the institutions to raise money to continue. So this was one grandfather who...
So Rivka, just to interrupt for just a moment. Firstly, happy birthday. What a special,
Thank you.
I didn't know it was your birthday when I asked you to share tonight, and what a great merit to have you share on your special day named after such a holy and amazing Rebbitzin, Rivka. From what I understand, I just want to pipe in just for one moment. You said that your grandmother up there is still doing tzedakah and all that, but that's something that you do now. You were telling me, if you can just let me know what you do in Argentina with the special mitzvos of candles and challah and bringing Shabbos to the people over there that doesn't have Shabbos, to bring more light in their life. That's what you do. That's what you told me that you do. You started an organization, and it's incredible to see how it passes down generations.
Exactly.
And you're really living, you're like, our ancestors only die if we let their visions and their hard work die, and you didn't, and you're continuing their important holy work by being a shlucha and a light and an emissary and really a chassid of the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin, because that's what you're doing, which is amazing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have started by thank yous, which is the way to do things. So thank you for choosing me for this special day. It's a special day for the history. It's a special day for every Jew. When the Frierdiker Rebbe, when the previous Rebbe was released from jail, he did say that it's not only him who's released from jail, but it's every Jew in the generation who's released from jail. This is, you know, and it's a celebration of our Rebbes. It's a celebration of every Jew in the generation and everybody, because they were fighting for world peace and good for everyone. So, and the personal, of course, reasons of a birthday. So yes, so first, thank you, Chaya, for choosing me for this day. And it's true, it's the stories that I was brought up on that push me and push me and push me and don't let me give up, even though it's difficult from far sometimes. Well, today, thank God, you know, with all the technology, it's I should say it's easy to be able to continue wherever we are, whatever we're doing. But yeah, definitely we got from our grandparents and from my parents, coming, of course, from the Rebbe, this push of just doing and doing and doing and trying to to bring Judaism to as many people as possible, which is what we try to do with this Shabbos program. And it's really brought Shabbos to many homes, and it's very beautiful. You know, one home, the mother lit the candles, and before we used to do challah, so one of the men told me, the father told me that the child said, you know, Papa, why is there no challah? You know, the child knew it from school. He said, if we have candles, why don't we have challah? And this is a way that the children start, you know, helping the parents come back to their tradition. So this is what we try to do. It's actually an amazing project because, you know, luckily the dollar, like you mentioned, goes very far. Like what you can do for $1 over there, perhaps you couldn't do in America. So that's very helpful. Yeah. My mother had trauma with the Shabbos candles, I must tell you, because of what she went through. And she decided that she's only going to light 2 candles always. But then when the Rebbe wanted us to add light and spoke a lot about how bringing light of Shabbos, a candle for each child in honor of each child, and you know, the more candles the merrier, let's say. Eventually my mother bought herself a beautiful, you know, candlestick. I think it has 12 candles on it, and she would then really enjoy lighting Shabbos candle, but it was extremely traumatic for her in the beginning. And then my other Zayda from the other side was a Chassid, very much, very close to the Rebbe. His uncle was, which is your family, also was very much loved by the Rebbe and cared for by the previous Rebbe. And my father was an orphan at 14. And also the conditions were terrible, and, you know, starvation, war, persecution, friends dying, family dying, it was terrible. He even to sit, you know, Shiva, the 7 days of mourning for his mother, they didn't have a home. There was 4 children, and they sat on a train station until someone saw them and brought them into their home so that they could finish the few days that were left of mourning for their mother. And the stories are really, like I said in the beginning, every time I hear them, I think they're more incredible in the sense of just how could they, like, how did they survive? And what we do know is that even there was a lot of Judaism, there were many yeshivas, many schools in Russia before the war. After the war, after the perestroika, when Russia opened doors, or even in the 70s, 1970 more or less, when people came out of Russia, the only most of the people who maintained the Judaism alive, in hiding and under all these terrible circumstances. Like I said, my grandmother would go to mikveh in frozen water. There are stories of women going to mikveh in green, excuse me, no, but disgusting, how do you say, podrido, how do you say in English? Okay, whatever, water that was completely green and blue and disgusting, and the women would use that mikveh, thanks to the previous Rebbe we have today, the most beautiful, warm, clean mikvahs. He insisted there should be absolute cleanliness and hygiene today so that every woman should enjoy and want to use the mikveh. But then it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that, uncomparable, right? But thanks to the inspiration and the warmth of the Hasidic movement and the Rebbe, when the doors opened, most of the people that came out of Russia still keeping Torah mitzvahs were Hasidim of the previous Rebbe. Other communities unfortunately lost it. They didn't have that strength. They didn't have that strength. My mother said that, told me that when my Zayda was taken, so my grandmother wanted the children to know what Simchas Torah is. Like they wanted them to know all the different mitzvahs. So she walked with the children in the middle of the night for an hour to another little town where she knew there was a Farbrengen happening, there was a Simchas Torah happening. And when they came in, first they didn't want to allow them in because you never knew who was a spy, who was really a chassid. This was also dangerous. There were people amongst them dressed as chassidim who were actually spies, telling on them to the government and to the authorities. But somebody recognized her and said, no, she's the wife of Chaya, let her in. So she was allowed in. And my mother says they were singing and celebrating Simchas Torah in absolute silence. They were singing away over there in absolute silence. It was so dangerous for any neighbor to know that there was Simchas Torah going on, but it was going on. And this is how they would have their gatherings and the Farbrengens and their Chassidic gatherings, and they would continue and continue and continue. And this is how, thank God, we're all here today. Because if Chabad is anywhere in the world today, it's thanks to this previous Rebbe's sacrifice and persistence and holiness and his love and warmth for every Jew, that we're all here. And you know, my parents have, thank God, received many letters from him, and they are so loving. At the end, he says, with all my love, or the one who loves you so much. It just really loving every Jewish soul, not because they were a chassid, because it's a Jewish soul, anybody and everybody. And this is what they taught us. Let's ignite everybody. We need us all. We're one body. You know, we can't leave anyone out. We can't leave the tiny little pinky out or our toenail out. We need everybody to be alive and well and healthy and strong and happy and in their Judaism and in their life. And this is what they inspired us so much to do. So my parents, when they eventually managed to escape Russia, they were sent by the previous Rebbe to be the leaders of the Jewish community in Ireland. This was 1950. Or before, they started before, and my father was a chassid. He had his beard, his typical, way of dressing, his typical way of behaving and everything. And it was so difficult because the people in Ireland were not excited about having a chassid as their ringleader, as their teacher and as their everything, even though they asked him to stay, but they tried to convince him, please, just cut your beard or start dressing, he was a chazan and he davened beautifully, and that's actually why they asked him to stay. Put on the cloak that the chazan would wear. And my father said, I'm really sorry, but that's what the priests are wearing today, and we Jews do not wear that cloak anymore, and I'm not gonna wear it. You can ask me from today till tomorrow. I'm not going to touch my beard. I'm a chassid, and this is the way we do things. And eventually they managed, thank God, to build up a community with many people, many students, to fix the mikvah, to bring the warmth of Judaism back to after-war communities that were so cold and so distant. And they had to learn the language. Like they were left alone over there to be leaders of a community. With what language, with what money? No money, no language. They actually learned English with books of Charles Dickens. Now, don't ask me how, because even I can't read that Gothic letters, even though I was brought up in England. And the language, the expression, extremely difficult, but they had to break their teeth and learn the language to be able to lead the community. But why did they have to be leaders? Because this is what our Rebbes wanted from us. Everyone is a leader wherever you are. Each of us are a leader in our own home. If we work in an office, we have a possibility to bring the light of Judaism to our office gently, carefully. Each one has to, figure out how. If we know only Aleph Bet, only 2 letters of the Aleph Base, or if we heard a story, or if we know some mitzvah or some nice custom or something, we really should be bringing it to another Jew, the previous Rebbe said. Even if you just know Aleph Base, you already have something to teach someone else. We are all leaders. We all have to be leaders. And this is what also I've heard from the previous chief rabbi of England, Lord Jonathan, Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sachs. He said what the Rebbe didn't only make Chassidim, the Rebbe made leaders. Children are taught by the Rebbe that they are leaders. They can be leaders in their class. They could be leaders with other children, neighbors, other children that don't know about Judaism. If it's Purim, they should bring them, you know, a Purim basket. If it's Pesach, they should bring matzah to other children. A little girl should bring a candle. So that I have a friend who doesn't know that it's a custom for little girls to light candles, should have a candle to light. We all need to be leaders. And this is so beautiful, right? Because all the problems of self-esteem and insecurities and so much has been taken care of by the Rebbes, who want us to be strong and to trust that we are parts of Hashem. We're Hashem's creation. We have part of Hashem in us. We are part of Hashem, and we are here to bring light to someone else. And a lot of low self-esteem drops because we see it working. We see that this is the truth, and this is what brings happiness to other people. So this is what strengthens each one of us on our own level, whatever the level is. So my parents became leaders. They were actually, to get out of Russia was extremely difficult. Of course, they escaped. They were held up twice by the American police on the borders in different places with guns at gunpoint, and saved by miracles, and all kinds of stories. How they eventually get to freedom. Chaya, how much time do I have? So I'd like to bring us a little bit to this Rebbe. Okay, Chaya, are you available? Sorry.
Yeah, you have some time.
I have some time, which means like more or less
20 minutes.
Oh, okay. So I'll just try and tell quickly how my parents got to Ireland, which is what happened to the whole community who came out, who escaped Russia basically at the same time. So your great-grandparents, I imagine, and actually my father was very friendly with your Chaimer, Itchemer, Minkowitz. It's your?
Yeah, that's my Chaimer is my grandfather's brother.
Oh, your grandfather's brother. Okay, so my father was very,
I
very
want to
close.
say Yitzchak Yaakov was their father, and he died running to the train station. The previous Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, was very into Israel, sending Jews money in Israel. And one of the things that my grandfather used to do was collect funds, my great grandfather, and bring it to the train station. And he missed a train, and he was so distraught that the Jews in Israel wouldn't get the funds that he had a heart attack, and that's how he passed away. But he was a very devoted chassid, and like your grandfather. And I believe that all these people that went through such hardships paved the way for us today to be able to live the beautiful, like we could live a Jewish life in the open. We don't have to hide it anymore. Today, you walk around, you're proud, you know, you go to the airport and they're like, take off your cap. And if you have a wig on underneath there, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm Orthodox. I can't take it off. I have a wig under I'm a religious Jew, and they can't say anything to you. They could try, but they can't. And when they see confidence in us, they don't mess with you. It just happened to me, and I was confident. I said, I'm not going to take it off. But our great-grandparents and our grandparents and our heritage really paved the way. They worked so hard. My grandmother, like you were saying, and I'm sure it's resonating with many of you with your stories of your family, but you know, my grandmother used to cut her finger so she wouldn't have to write in school. And she was actually a relative of yours.
There you go.
But I'm saying it was a group of Hasidim that literally gave their lives, their fathers, they grew up with their fathers and their grandfathers in prison. They were only in prison because of being a Jew and being a Chassid of the Rebbeim, but they were so loyal. And like they were smart. They had to figure out ways, but not only were they loyal, they were tortured. And I think in return today, we should take on something in our lives to be more Jewish and to be a proud Jew for all the pain that they went through. Like, you know, the stories that you're saying about your grandparents, it's amazing, but they really paved the way for us to have the beauty that we do. We can light Shabbat candles. We could have Shabbat meals with our friends in the open. We could walk down the street with our tzitzis. We can wear yarmulkes. You know, some places today, even today, they say we're a Jew, but we're a Jew inside. They don't want to show the world that they're Jewish. And I believe that they should all walk around to be a proud Jew. I mean, who am I to judge? But in Paris today, many of the Jewish people won't walk out with a kippah showing. And it could be dangerous, but I do believe that if everyone sticks together and they're strong and they're proud and they won't mess with you. You know, we have protection. We have mezuzahs on our door. We have real protection today. Hashem protects us. So I'm so grateful to all the amazing stories that you're sharing. Sorry for the little interruption, but I wanted to show everyone that we all could be proud Jews, and we should be proud Jews. We should be proud of our heritage. We all come from the same source. It doesn't matter what stories you have in your family and the other family, but at the end of the day, everyone has their mission that they are meant to take on. And in your world, and you should be the leader, like Rivka said.
Okay, thank you. Exactly. My mother, when she speaks to groups, so that's exactly what she says, you know, that we had so much sacrifice for each mitzvah, and today you can enjoy it in freedom and in comfort and in luxury even, you know. If you can have a silver candlestick for Shabbat, why have a little tea light, you know? If you, thank God, eventually we can afford it, right? And you know, if we can have a nice Kiddush cup, why have a plastic one? I mean, we have the, thank God today, possibility to save up and buy beautiful things and enjoy them the same way that we see, you know, the menorahs and all the parks and the Sukkot and all kinds of streets and Judaism, like you're saying very well, Chaya, today is something to be really proud of and strong and enjoy it, right? And enjoy the comfort of it. So so I'll try and say it short. So there was a time when one chassid, a few of them actually, managed to falsify passports because Polish citizens could leave Russia. So they falsified passports as if they were Polish for many chassidim to be able to leave Russia. And there was a whole mess. This one was married to that one and the other one was that one, a whole story. Actually, my uncle from my father's side, who was one of the founders of Grunblatt, traveled on a train where 6 of the 7 people had tickets and one of them didn't, so he hid in a box and someone had to sit on the box, and when the authorities came to check the tickets, he was like inside that box, people sitting on the box like with no air, but he managed to survive. And they went through different countries, Czechoslovakia and here and there, and everyone was kicking them out, and no one wanted these Jews, you know, like we hear today of countries where people try to, you know, cross borders and they're not wanted. And eventually they got to Germany and then to France. And when they went to France, they settled down to do what? To do what? Like, no one knew what was coming, what was next, what are we doing here, where are we going next? They just didn't know. But like Yaakov, when they went to Egypt, sent one of his sons earlier to prepare a yeshiva so that they'll be able to continue learning Torah, because that's us, that's our essence. That's what gives us life and keep us going. So they sat down and they learned Torah. And just to wait for the destiny, to wait for whatever God chose next, whatever the Rebbe were going to arrange for them. Most of them have never seen the Rebbe. And then they sat down to learn. So the message came from the previous Rebbe that they should learn shchita. They should learn how to slaughter animals and prepare, you know, food to be kosher. They had no idea why, but this is what the Rebbe said, so this is what they did. And then it was 1948, and in Ireland, there was some people who made a factory to send canned meat to Israel. And they prepared the whole factory. They had the cans, they had everything, they had the whole structure. But they didn't have shochet. They didn't have anyone to slaughter the animals. And word came to them somehow that in France, there's a whole yeshiva of young men who are learning shchita. So they sent a message and they invited them to come to Ireland to do shchita, to prepare the meat for Israel. So here was signs of some maybe future. It was definitely a sign of prophecy of the previous Rebbe and his caring that these young men should eventually have a future and earn some money and start, seeing that there's going to be something to do with their lives. So my father was one of the married. There were only a few couples married then, and my father was one of them, my parents. And as I said, he davened beautifully, sang beautifully, and he went into the local shul on Shabbos, and he was chazan. And they asked him, they asked him to stay? Would he stay and live there and become their rabbi and their leader and their moel and their shoichet and everything that they needed? So he asked the previous Rebbe, and the previous Rebbe said yes, he should definitely stay. So he was already a shliach, one of the first in the world after the war. In Ireland, and for 9 years he didn't he never saw the Rebbe. The previous Rebbe passed away, the new Rebbe took on the leadership, and it took him 9 years till he ever got to see a Rebbe. But he was, and again, he was broken, he lost his parents, he lost his family, what they suffered was terrible, but they became the leaders, like I mentioned before. So I'd like to jump a little bit to my own personal experiences with the Rebbe, which was just so amazing and so powerful and so beautiful. Our home was, my mother would talk, my father wouldn't say a word till I was 18. I never heard from him anything. It was just so difficult for him, so painful. I didn't even know I had grandparents from his side. Like I never heard nothing about them until I was about 18. So my mother would tell stories and my father would sing Hasidic nigunim. So that was like really amazing. It was just beautiful. The Hasidic melodies that he would sing on Shabbos just took me somewhere, which I didn't know where, but it was extremely powerful. So that was a very strong part of my formation. And when I eventually got to the Rebbe, the first time my parents took us to the Rebbe in 770 in New York, I was 11. It was before my bas mitzvah. My sister was then getting married. And it was the Yontif of the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidut. That was when the first Rebbe was released from jail, and the Tanya was then printed. There's a funny story. There's a boy from a non-Hasidic family went to a yeshiva of Chabad. And one day his father calls him, it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the boy is very sleepy. And his father says, "Why are you sleeping? Like, didn't you go to study this morning?" He said, "No, actually, because last night we had a Fabringen, a Hasidic gathering, and it went until very late, and we went to bed late, so we just couldn't get up, so we slept in late." Why was there a Hasidic gathering? Oh, because one of the Rebbes was released from jail. Jail? Yeah, it's a long story. It's okay, Dad, don't worry. A few months later, the father calls again around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and again his son is very sleepy. And again he asks him, "Why are you so sleepy?" And he says, "Well, actually there was a Fabringen last night." "Why was a Fabringen last night?" So he says, "Because one of the other different Rebbes, we have 7, was in jail and he was released from jail." And his father says, "Again, released from jail?" And this happened a few times. And his father said, "Where did I send you to? A yeshiva where the Rebbes were all in jail? What, were all criminals in jail? What kind of stories are these?" So of course we know when we talk about the jail, we're talking about our Rebbe's holy people giving up their lives for Judaism, doing everything they can to keep the flame alive. Today's a day for L'chaim, because it's a day that we thank Hashem for our leaders. We thank Hashem for giving us the Rebbe of this generation, who till today we are living and hearing miracle stories. I'll tell you one in a minute, but let's just say L'chaim. So I said the bracha before. L'chaim, everybody, and thank you, Chaya, and L'chaim to you, Chaya. Keep up your amazing, beautiful light that you're bringing, and I'm sure comfort and happiness that you're bringing to all your listeners. L'chaim, everybody. It's my birthday, so I'm wishing you all revealed good, all brachas, everything that everybody feels that they need and everything that Hashem knows that you need. And of course, what we need most is the revelation of Mashiach. Getting back to Hashem should come back to his home in Yerushalayim, to the Beit HaMikdash, and bring us all there. And we'll celebrate with health and wealth and happiness and shalom bayit and everything that we need. Nachas from all our children, Yiddish nachas, as we say, Chassidish nachas from all our children. So, L'chaim.
Amen, v'amen. And
Thank you. So I was 11, and we were very privileged to be able to have an audience, private audience with the Rebbe. And we came from England, so we had a wedding. We had the Rebbe's Farbrengen a few days before, about 6 hours. We were totally jet lagged and like lost in time. And we came to the Rebbe's room at 5 a.m. So it was my parents and my brother, who was 13 and I was 11. We came to the Rebbe's room. And the Rebbe had a Farbrengen a few days before, and he had been seeing people the night before. And that night, many, many people, and listening and attending to everybody's personal needs. And when we opened the door, and actually the door in those days was left open a lot, but when we came close, the Rebbe sat up, and you could see that he was bothered by the expression on his face. And he said, "Why wasn't I told that you were coming with children? I would have let you in before, earlier." So that was my first personal experience with the Rebbe, just caring, just caring. These are children. Why weren't they able to come in a time that's good for them? That was very, very beautiful. My husband tells a story of when he was in yeshiva in Israel. He was going through some, difficult times, and the Rebbe sent a letter to all the whole group of friends that was sent by the Rebbe to strengthen the yeshiva in Israel, to strengthen the communities. And the Rebbe sent a general letter, which is something also, sometimes people tell me, there are other Rebbes in the world. Why are you so intense about your Rebbe? Like, why are you so thinking that he's so important? There are many important Rebbes and other tzaddikim in the world. And one of my answers is, that I used to get a letter, or we all used to get a letter, every Yom Tov, every Jewish holiday and Hasidic holiday from the Lubavitch Rebbe. There was a letter that would go out to every Jewish man or woman over the world, wherever you are. Greetings and blessings. And the Rebbe would give a message about the Yom Tov and a beautiful blessing, how we can get brachas from that Yom Tov, and the message of what we can, like Chaya said, what we can be doing from the lessons that we're learning from that Yom Tov. And I say, you know what? I never got a letter from any other rabbi in the world. Like, as tzaddik as he is, there's one leader who, like Moshe Rabbeinu, who cared for the little sheep that ran away, and he apologized to the sheep. If only I would have known you were thirsty, and that's why you ran away. And he picked him up and brought him back to the flock. There's only one world leader. There's only one heart that includes everyone else's heart. One main neshama that includes everyone else's neshama and cares for everybody. So my husband's group got one of these letters wishing the group of friends, his brachas and a message for the whatever chag it was. But this time 2 letters came to the yeshiva, one for the whole group and one for my husband. And the Rebbe wrote underneath in his own handwriting a special message to my husband. And he was a boy of then 20, maybe 22, 20. And the Rebbe just felt that he needs to get a personal letter, a private letter with some personal words. the caring that we see of the Rebbe through all the generations. The story I was going to tell you, a friend of mine just wrote in our class group WhatsApp that this Shabbos she had a guest from Israel who asked for a bracha to have a child 20 years ago. 20 years before they had the child. And he came to New York now with his bar mitzvah boy to thank the Rebbe for this baby who was born 20 years after the Rebbe gave him a bracha. But the child was born. Even if it took 20 years, the child was born. And we hear these stories today that are just continuous and so beautiful. So one day I came, Baruch Hashem, with one of my sons for his bar mitzvah. We came to the Rebbe, and this was already, when we go to the Ohel, which is amazing privilege, but we ask Hashem, this is not it. We need a leader to our eyes that we could see flesh and blood, like we used to have the Rebbe, who would speak to us and give us, the dollar to put in tzedakah with the bracha, and give us wine, and give us honey cake before Yom Kippur, and all the beautiful, beautiful moments and things, and cheer on the children and give messages to the children of how important they are. Most people, like in Argentina, they tell me when they would see me asking my children to bring something to the Shabbos table or to do something, poor kid, leave her alone. She's so young. I'll do it. Don't bother her. No, the Rebbe taught us that kids are strong. Kids are powerful. Kids have the power to do so much more than adults can do. Train them in properly, and they'll be good soldiers of Hashem. And this is what the Rebbe did, and this is what we need today. But the situation was that we, thank God, go at least to pray, whenever possible, to the Rebbe's Ohel, to his resting place. And over there, many, 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 many miracles happen. Jews and non-Jews alike go there to pray, and there are many miracles. So one day I traveled from Argentina with this son for his bar mitzvah, and there is a comfortable room that's been prepared over there where you can write your letter that you're going to, read by the Rebbe's grave, and then you tear it up and throw it on there. These are customs. And there's also video playing of different, like Chaya showed before, different moments, with the Rebbe. And I had some time. My kids had to daven. I was with the bar mitzvah boy and older brother, and they had to daven, and they went to the mikveh and this and that. And I had some time to contemplate, to think, and to, to think what I was writing. And I was asking a bracha for Argentinian Jews who are it was very difficult. We've gone through many economic crises. The country is really, really tough in that sense, and other things. And I was thinking, I was going to write that. And I thought, why do I have to always complain or talk about the bad things, or, or say that it's tough? Let's just write nice things and leave that part out. And I'm watching the video, and a couple come by to receive a bracha from the Rebbe and $1 to give in tzedakah and to add from their own money for tzedakah. And they said, we're from Argentina, but we're okay. We didn't come to ask for anything specific. And the Rebbe is surprised, and the Rebbe says, God has plenty. Ask for a lot and you'll get a lot. And in Argentina, they can also do well with it. Now, I was just thinking a few minutes before, should I write that there are people that need help and need money and need better lives? And someone goes by in the camera exactly then asking, and the Rebbe says, you should ask Hashem for money, because Hashem has plenty. And in Argentina, they could also use it. It could also come in well. And things like that have happened. One of our sons was working for us, for my husband, in the editorial. He was managing, getting the books to all Spanish-speaking people over the world, and sales and all these things. And he wanted to do a concert to call people's attention to the editorial. Now, my husband needs a lot of quiet because thank God, uses, he needs his mind available hours and hours and hours a day. So he doesn't enjoy noise and he doesn't enjoy too much, He likes quiet and peaceful moments. And my son was insisting we should do a concert. And he arranged to bring Avram Fried, which was very costly. And our president then, our ex-president, who's supposed to be in jail, by the way, she decided to make it a national holiday that day, so many people didn't come, whatever, it was a whole story. But my husband was really not too happy about this whole thing. And on Motzei Shabbos, he sat down to translate the Rebbe's videos, which he translates into Spanish. Thank God he's very blessed with a lot of privileges. And someone came to the Rebbe and said in the dollar line that he has a roving, you say, library, that he goes around, from different places taking books to people. And the Rebbe said it's important to change the books, to have different books that people will be interested. And also it's a good thing to make a dinner or a concert once a year, which is what will bring people to the attention of the books. I mean, this was just like, so my husband changed his attitude and he became happy about it and helpful and everything. And we made the concert. But what happened was my son wanted to give my husband a gift. So the year before we had a l'chaim in the editorial with people that was sponsoring and helping us. And then my son had got a picture of when my husband gave the Rebbe personally the first book that the Rebbe had worked on when he came to America, which was the Hayom Yom, which is Hasidic sayings for every day, a Hasidic saying. It's a beautiful book. I highly recommend it. It has beautiful sayings and thoughts. Today you can get them from here and from there, and all these affirmations. Is that how you say in English? Sentences that you're supposed to be telling yourself to keep your day going. Okay, so we have these Hasidic ones, right, in this book. Hayom Yom, it's called, from day to day, day by day, or day to day, I don't know in English. And he came and he brought it to the Rebbe. So my son got the picture of that moment and he framed it and he gave it to my husband as a gift the year before. But this time he wanted to give him the video. So my son got in touch with the office in New York and he asked them, could they please send him the video of when my husband got this bracha, giving the Rebbe the book. So yeah, sure, you paid then $50 and we got the video. So my son calls in my husband to his office. He says, come, Ta, I want to show you something. And he puts on the video. And he did not know, my son did not know, and my husband did not remember, that after he gave in to the Rebbe the book in Spanish, he asked for a bracha for his son, who then became 7. This was 20 years before, and we were celebrating 20 years of the editorial. And it was this son, it was this boy who's showing his father a video of the father getting the book and then hearing how the Rebbe is giving him $1 for his 7th birthday exactly 20 years before, and now they're celebrating 20 years of the editorial. I mean, the Rebbe is with us, the Rebbe is with everybody, and it's not just us, the Shluchim, or just us, the Chassidim. The Rebbe is with you, with each one of us, with each one of you. He is here for every soul, for every member of the generation. He is with us. I don't know if more than before, but the stories are much more than before. The previous Rebbe said that before Mashiach, there'll be so many stories of miracles, there won't be time to tell them. And this is what's happening today, because everybody you talk to today who has any kind of contact, who has tried, who has asked for a bracha, who has asked someone else to ask for a bracha, everyone can tell you a story. So if any of you have not yet, had a chance or tried, today, the 10th of Shvat, is a day when we are welcome to write letters and ask for brachas, and of course say something nice also, because there was a time when the Rebbe was very distressed and he said he needs good news. He's only getting people with pain asking for bracha. This one is ill, God willing, no one should need to ask for that kind of thing. But you know, unfortunately, it's true, you know, there's a lot of things going on, and the Rebbe was only getting people asking for this and asking for painful solutions, and the Rebbe said, please, I need good news. And you know, the heart pumps the blood to the body, and the other organs have to give the blood back to the heart so that the heart can continue, but it needs to be cleaned in the meantime, right? The blood gets cleaned through the body and then goes back. And this is the idea. The Rebbe is the heart of the generation. He's pumping us, and he's giving us, you know, strength and vitality and enthusiasm. If you only watch the videos, you'll see how the Rebbe sang and danced. And it was an older man who never did gym. He didn't have time to do any kind of exercise or aerobics, but you could watch him with his hand with such power, so that we should bring out the happiness in us. You know, after the war, the Rebbe even said, how could I even expect people to be jumping up and down and be happy and sing and celebrate? Everybody's coming so broken and so distressed, you know, so destroyed from the war and everything they went through. How could I even be expecting people to pick up their joy and their happiness? And the Rebbe explained that this is part of our soul. It's in our soul. So he's not really asking us to do anything new or so distant from us. He's just asking us to bring it out from inside. So so this is what the Rebbe is giving us all. And the stories just prove to us, like, you know, like Chaya, your program is about stories. The stories just prove to us that this is so real. And especially today, hundreds and thousands of stories, beautiful stories that we could tell of how the Rebbe is with each one of us. So if I may, sorry, I suggest that each one writes the letter in any way they want. You could send an email to the office at the Rebbe's Ohel, and somebody will take the letter and put it in the Rebbe's grave. You can even do it mentally. We've had many brachas just by concentrating and connecting with our hearts, with our minds. You know, my husband's received that way also by opening the books of the Rebbe's letters that he sent to people over the years. Many times we found just exactly what we needed to hear. My husband has received a number of times in merit of the translations that you were doing, bringing the teachings of Torah to people in different countries that need in their language. You will merit to see whatever it was, nachas from your children, whatever the bracha was then. And that was just by concentrating. Thank God we have other stories. We bought a house and we had also a miracle, bracha from the Rebbe. So, sorry. So the whole idea of everything really is that we are all here, as Chaya mentioned, with a personal mission, with a collective mission, which is to be Torah Jews, and a personal mission which only each one of us can do. This world Hashem calls is his garden. And when the previous Rebbe, the last teaching that he left us, and the first teaching of this Rebbe talks about, is based on a passage from the writings of Shlomo HaMelech, the King Solomon, where he says, I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. It's a very love story kind of book, Shir Hashirim, but it's really written about the love of Hashem to the Jewish people who he calls his bride. You know, like we say, Lecha Dodi Likrat Kala, right? The Jewish people are called Hashem's bride. The Shabbos is called Hashem's bride. And where Hashem says that he wants to come back to his garden, he calls this world a garden. And he was in the garden before, you know, Adam and Chava were sent out of the garden. This world is Hashem's garden. And if we look at the world, we could say garden. A garden is a beautiful place where each flower has its place, and it's you know, it's grown in a special way, and each one in its own corner, and the fragrances and the colors. That's what makes a garden. But if we look at this world today, There are beautiful places, but maybe there's a lot still to hope that it should look like the world, should look like a garden. But yes, this is Hashem's garden. And what's taking time, what took time till now is because, as the Rebbe explained to us, there's different.
Sorry, Rivka, you just muted yourself.
So did you hear me saying there's the woods, the fields and the gardens? Woods, we just let them grow wild. So whatever grows there grows, and you do have some plants that are edible and some things that are, sometimes a flower will come out, but nobody's working on the woods. And then you have fields where people do plow and plant and reap what they've managed to grow over there. So that takes effort, but the most effort takes a beautiful garden. That's where every day, one of my daughters made a beautiful garden for us, and every day she would put the plants in the sun, out of the sun, give them water, measure, check this and that. I mean, she even grew a sunflower from a seed from a jar that I had in the kitchen. She took a seed and grew a sunflower, and it came out a beautiful flower, but she took care of it every single day. So this is how we make a garden. And this is why it's been taking so long, because we're nurturing Hashem's garden. And this is our mission. Each one of us, we're in the 7th generation of Rebbes, like Moshe Rabbeinu was the 7th leader who managed to bring Hashem's presence through the work that the Jewish people did then in the desert of bringing from themselves donations from their physical and from the material and from their spiritual work in order to transform materials of this world into a home, a sanctuary, a temple for Hashem in the wilderness. And this is what we are chosen to do now, to elevate this material world, to change the lies and the darkness into light. And I'll just mention one thing. Chaya, do I have a moment? One. Okay, so when the construction of the temple in the sanctuary in the desert, we were told to bring Atzei Shittim, they are called, and Krashim, which is Keresh, which is a plank of wood. So the walls were made out of cedar wood and the planks of wood. So this is, I'll just say very quickly, it's a beautiful, beautiful Maimer, which is a Hasidic discourse, which the previous Rebbe was the last one that he taught us, and the Rebbe based his his leadership on this. And the idea is that Atzei Shittim, that in Hebrew we say shtut. Shtut is folly, it's stupidity, right? The idea is to take the stupidity of the world and transform it into stupidity for holiness, which means something like the stories we're telling. You could say it was, what kind of logic does it have to have so much sacrifice for a mitzvah when people were being tortured, or in Mitzrayim when women would have children, even though their children were being plastered into the walls and thrown into the Nile. I mean, you have to be stupid. So we take that stupidness and we transform it into stupidity, folly for sanctity, for holiness. And we say, yes, we are going to do it. We're going to go all the way, like on Hanukkah. We're going to look until we find oil that has the stamp of holiness of the high priest. We're not going to just go with the regular oil that we had. We're going to go all the way. So this is the idea. And the keresh, the plank of wood, we take those letters, keresh, and we turn them around, and we have the word sheker, which is lies. And we have the word kesher, which is connection. With these 3 letters, we can make all these 3 words. So we take the lies of the world, we take the darkness of the world, we take the darkness, and we transform it where it's painful, God forbid, where things look dark, where we don't see the light. We turn it over and we turn it and we transform it into light. The same way the Rebbe brought out the happiness and the joy in these Hasidim. My father had a cousin who was the most joyful person. This is also your family, Zalman Levin, of Chabad, in Kfar Chabad he lived. And whenever there would be any event, he would be the one singing. And on the, the music records, those black things in the olden days, he would be the one singing V'samachta b'chagecha. And when 1,000 orphans of soldiers, Israeli soldiers, would have their bar mitzvah in Kfar Chabad, he would be the one making them happy. And when he came to our house in London, my mother put on the kettle, and the kettle sang, and he would say, ah, and he would start a Hasidic nigun melody, because when he heard the tone of the kettle, he went away from his house for Shabbos in Russia. And when he came back, the 5 members of his family had been killed by the Nazis. And he was the one making everybody else celebrate and joyous and happy. This is what is asked from us, to change the lies of the world, to change the darkness, to change those that want to make us embarrassed to wear a kippah in the street, like you were saying, right? Or what, you're going to use a mikvah? That's old-fashioned. Today you have a beautiful bathtub, you have a jacuzzi in your house, and you have all the soaps and shampoos and perfumes that you could buy. Why do you need to use rainwater of a mikvah where other women go to purify yourself for your husband once a month or whenever is needed? We changed that into, yes, we go, and during COVID, oh my Chaya, you should get someone to speak, I don't know if you did, about the stories of mikvah during COVID times. Oh, wow. Our women are we are just amazing. We are just amazing. If we needed to prove it in Russia in the ice cold and dirty waters, we could prove it today during COVID times. And each one of us is here to, to not plant anymore, just to cultivate those beautiful flowers that our ancestors have planted for us, and to bring Hashem's light into this world. And let's say l'chaim, and just pray and do and dance with our tambourines. And it just, even when we're feeling like things are not so happy and not looking so good, I mean, I'm in Israel and you know what's going on. We know that through simcha, through happiness, and through transforming those negative feelings and negative news and everything, this is the way we prepare the world for Hashem's light to be able to shine in the world.
So beautiful, Rivka. We are so beautiful, L'chaim. That was so special and beautiful. We're going to need you to come back, because I know you have so many more stories to share with us, so many more that you shared with me in private. But we just have a certain amount of time. So I want to thank you so much for sharing your beautiful stories and encounters and history with us, and staying up late. And happy birthday to you. All the blessings again, only good. And we should celebrate together, like you said, with the coming of Mashiach with tambourines. And we're going to conclude now with a beautiful 8-minute video that I think it's worth it to stay on if you can. So check out the screens while here we go.
So much has been written about what it means to be a Jew in today's world. But what does it mean to be a Chassid?
That was Argentina. That was my brother-in-law, who's the head rabbi of Argentina, the Chabad rabbi.
Dem Sipor hat erzählt, der Baal HaGiule war Simcha, da in Amerika, in a Verbringen, was sie gewählt verbunden mit a Verbringen von Tammuz. Und hat Tibet erzählt, als sie gewählt bei Messibe, bei seinem Vater, beim Rebbe Nishmaseiden. Hat einer von der Chassidim gefragt, was ist ein Chassid? Hat ihm der Rebbe Nishmaseiden geantwortet, als ein Chassid, das ein Lantern steht. A Lanterne heißt das a Panas, a Fanar, was mit 10 Tonnen Gas gedeiht zu machen, lichte Kehr bei Nacht. Amole gewinnt der Seder, als pflegt sein ungegräht Lampen oder Licht in verschiedene Örter in Stadt, und zu Vernacht zu gewinnt a Ish Hamemuna Ose. Gewinnt a Mensch, was gewinnt auf Druf, dass gewinnt sein Ninien, als pflegt herumgehen mit alleinigen Stecken, warum die Fanaren, die Lanterne seien gestanden in der Heich, pflegt herumgehen mit alleinigen Stecken, was auf neben ist gewesen angezündet nach Feier, und pflegt der Miet zugehen zu den alle Lanternen und pflegt sie anzünden. Und der Menschen hat ihn gerufen Lanternenstück. Und da sie gewesen der Rentfer von der Reben von der Nossi auf der Scheile, was ist ein Chassid, hat ihm geentfert, da sie ein Lanternenstück. Was geht herum mit der Weinigen Stecken und weiß, dass der Feier nicht seiner. Und was aber sein Ninien mit dem Feier soll gehen und anzünden die alle Lanternen. Hat der Scheel gefragt noch einmal, und wie ist die Lanterne steht in einer Wispe. Eine Wispe heißt das in einem Mock im Schomem in einem Midbar. Hat ihm der Rebbe nicht mal sehen geentfert, darf man echt gehen und anzünden die Lanterne. Man soll sehen, dass das ist eine Wispe. Und hat Messiaen gewähnt, und die Wispe soll sich schämen vor der Lanterne. Hat der Chassid weiter gefragt, und wie ist die Lanterne steht in der Jam. Hat ihm der Rebbe nicht mal sehen, auf der Ruf geentfert, demol darf man erst an die Levushim und reinspringen in den Jam und anzünden die Lanterne. Hat der Chassid weiter rübergefragt, das ist kein Chassid, hat der Rebbe mir schon nicht mal sehen, vertracht und noch ein Trachten geentfert, ja, das ist ein Chassid. Hat der Chassid weiter gesagt, ich sehe nicht kein Lanternes. Hat ihm der Rebbe nicht mal sehen geentfert, dass ich der Fahr war, du bist nicht kein Lanternenstück. Hat weiter gefragt, wie wird man ein Lanternenstück? Hat ihm der Rebbe nicht mal sehen geentfert, man darf anheben von sich, ein Reis gehen von Grobkeit und waschen sich. Als man ist allein grob, setzt man Grobkeit. Als man wird edel, ist er demol, setzt man beim zweiten Nechet Edelkeit. Hat der Chassid nicht gewollt ablassen, hat weiter gefragt, sie möge ich ihm nehmen für einen Gorgel. Sie für einen Gorgel heißt das für einen Halt. Dem der Rebbe nicht mal sehen, geentfert für einen Gorgel nicht, aber für einen Latz ja. Latz heißt das ein Leppel, der Vorn von dem Begit Hachitze. Hat kann der Sipur, wo der Rebbe, der Nossi, hat erzählt, was hat gehört von seinem Vater, dem Nossi, wie hat geentfert der Chassid. Was Beklolus a Sipur ist doch verstandig, a das, was man meint, Lanterne, das Näher, a Weihe, nicht mehr Soda. Und auf Druf sagt man, als sie da a Tafkid, als sie da a seine Licht, was man ist, ist siebische Tihie, seien sie noch nicht angezündet. Und was ist der Ihnen, was ist a Chassid, als darf gehen und anzünden Licht. Is auf der Ruflach hat viele der Bewohner ist, hat der Lanternenstück weiß, hat der Feier nicht seine. Und das, was geht, jenem anzünden, ist der Ihnen, was leichter noch, sie das schämen. Und Psylo, ist das nicht seine, das liegt bei jenem schön fertiger Heid. Und das, was ist jenem anzünden, nicht der Pirusch, als bringt ihm Ihnen mit Bachutz, weckt in dem Muf oder der Ihnen, was da beim Zweiten von früher. Davon sind nach Zweiten nicht schon mehr, ist mehr nicht, was mir darf jene Meere sein, Megale sein, die Nekuda Sayades, was hat bei sich behalten, auf Aris nehmen, in Mina Kirche, Lapel, danach wird es bei jenem Jatz mir giftig. Chafila, das Asami, was gefindt sich in der Wispe. Wo das Midbar Shome im Eretz asher leyoshe vodem sho. Kein Mitzis, was soll seine Mina Nusha viele der Poches bejeser, konnet es kommen und bleiben leben in der Midbar Shome. Und auch das bei ihm sei mal mit der Matze, was sehr viel Reik mit Kol Meile, als wir können ihm nicht gefunden, kein Linie von der Nusche ist nicht. Das hat aber der Sehne am Tong heben uns in sein nefischer Kies, wird sich anheben, Mistakel sein und Misbeine sein, sagt, das ist ein Wisper, sein Anhog ist ein von der Midbar. Und unter Dämmert wird Sof kol Sof kommen, wie Messiah, wie der Rebbe der Nossi hat Messiah gewähnt, die Wispe wird sich im Schämen von der Lamterne. Is hat da hebt on der Scholes Aveda von der Gire Ktano, wird im Steigen, bis wann es auf Kosov wird die Wispe, weil Jose mit Bore keiden, die gar nicht. Und danach fragt man die zweite Scheile, was sie da in dem zweiten gesehen. Sie sagt, kein Mai im Elatero, ist bei ihm in Asamin Seder, was er bei ihm ist, nicht, was lernt hat, und sie geblieben auf der Polizei, nur geworden wie ein Jammer, sind ganzen voll mit Tere. Und Afal Pikein kann sich sein, wie sagt in Novis Drebnossen, dass kann sein Tere und soll nie sein, in ihre Schamai. Und auf der Ruf antwortet man, als Eber ist kommen zu gehen mit seinen Lewuschen. Eber ist kommen zu gehen und ein Masbir sein. Mit Lewusch von Meise, mit Lewusch von Dibu, mit Lewusch von Machschove, ist wie bald der Jener im Molle, wie Gottischen Tere wird ihm niedernehmen. Beschaß sich aber erst von sich und wird reinspringen in Jahren, wo das ist der Linie von Messias Nefesh. Und mit was wird ihm nehmen? Mit sein Ätzem an der Schome, mit sein Pnimis an der Schome, oder demut ist ein Ätzem, nimmt und der Gericht zum zweiten Ätzem, wo das Heche von Kaf nicht nur von Machschove, Dibur und Meise, nur ich von den Minien nach Havone war Soge. Beschaß kommen zu gehen und wird mit dem nehmen, mit der Deava Pnimis, was sie nicht hat zu einem zweiten, und wie sagt in Tanien Perikla mit Besa, was ist die Ave, der Fall was all welche die Kolonne, der Fall was alle Jiden, seien in derselbe Bonne Matem la Weile Kirche von demselben Babischen, nimmt ihm durch der Likus, was sie da in Jenems nicht haben, und in seine Schome, oder demut wird uns in die Lanterne, was sie gefindet sich in Jan. Wo das ist der Linie von Achosid, wie der Rebbe Schmasseden hat das Masber gewählt.
Wow. So, my dear friends, are you going to be a lamplighter? Are you going to share your light? Are you going to spread your light? I think everyone wants to be that person. And we're going to conclude tonight with this quote that the Rebbe shared. The world is God's most precious garden, and we are its gardeners. So let's garden and make it even more beautiful. And together, very soon, we will celebrate Mashiach. Thank you again, Mrs. Rivka Grunblatt, for your beautiful stories and words. I hope we'll have you again. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll send out the recording to those that couldn't make it, but happy Yud Shvat to everyone. Connect, 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 because the Rebbe is yours. The Rebbe said today's the day that I'm going to connect to you. If you'll connect to me, the chain reaction, and we should all feel him in our lives. We should all feel God in our lives. We should all feel the blessings in our life. We should all see the blessings in our life in a revealed way. So thank you, everyone. Sorry it took a little longer tonight, but it's an extra special day. We're celebrating two amazing Rabbeim in our lives, and through their sacrifice that they made today, we have a beautiful garden. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.